This is a hub before rebuild. Can you hear that? A little bit of a grind. Definitely a dry bearing, a little bit too tight. Okay, let's pack and rebuild. So before we get started, we need to have a look at the axle here. This happens to be a solid axle. This process is the same whether it's a solid axle or a through axle for quick release. Now, these are ball bearing hubs. These are somewhat older technology, but they're still commonly used. And the basic premise of a ball bearing is that there is a cone inside here, a tapered cone that threads onto this axle, which is locked in place by this lock nut here. So in order to get at the bearings, we have to remove this lock nut, pull it off, and back out the cone so we can get access to the ball bearings that are inside this race here. The tools of the trade are these cone wrenches. Another word might be spanner wrench in different mechanical terminology. But you'll find that we're going to use a 17 millimeter and a 13 millimeter to get the cone off, and the 17 millimeter to pull off the lock nut. Now this is also a 17 millimeter, and I find it is a little easier to use because it's got a little bit more width to it and lets you grab a little better. And as you'll see, we have to play with locking the nuts on each other, and you'll need to counterbalance one, hold one nut in place while you back off the next one to release the tension. With the wrenches in place, this cone wrench, the 13 millimeter, is latched onto the cone nut on the inside, and then my 17 millimeter is grabbing the lock nut here, and I'm going to rotate lefty-loosey just like a normal thread while I'm holding this wrench steady, and that will remove the lock nut. I'd show you, but I'm holding the camera at the same time. Well, that was super tight. You can see the cone nut right here. And this is the 17 millimeter lock nut. And I'm just going to back it all the way off. And once I have it off, I'll be able to remove the cone. Alright, the cone is coming off. And if I keep backing it out, this is the cone nut. It's got a collar around it. This is a dust protector collar. It helps keep dust and dirt out. And inside here, you'll see the bearings that are inside a ring. They're ball bearings, and we're going to pull this guy off, and we'll see immediately how dry those bearings are. There should be grease in here. So we're going to put grease in there, and we're going to have a look at what these things look like. Okay, so there's the bearing cup. That's where the bearings ride. And here they are on the axle. So there's the cone in the middle, and then there's the lock nut here on the end. So these bearings, when I insert the axle, they fall right down into that cup, and then the cone rides on the inside of those ball bearings there. So we're going to pull this apart, we're going to clean it and lube it up. Okay, I've cleaned up the bearings, cleaned out the bearing cup, and now I've got some bicycle grease on the bearings. It's a little sloppy there, but I'm going to insert the axle through so that the first cone, which I haven't had to remove because it's locked into place, it's cleaned up. We're going to slide it all the way through and mate that cone with the bearings on the inside. And I'm just going to rotate it a little bit, spread that grease around. And now I'm going to flip over the other side, clean it, and reinsert that bearing. Okay, the other side, the bearing is inserted into the cup, and it's ready for the cone. Thought you might like a close-up of the cone nut. And if the light were a little bit better, you'd see there's some wear on that bevel, probably because the bearing was a little dry. Of course, with grease in there, it'll run smooth, like brand new. Now the key in the adjustment of the cone on the bearing is you don't want any play in this axle. If I'm shaking it back and forth, if there's wiggle in it, then this cone is not tight enough here. However, if I tighten the cone too tight, it's going to put undue pressure on those bearings and the axle won't spin freely. So the magic adjustment point is to where this cone is screwed onto the axle just enough that the cone is in contact with the bearings. And then we'll move that lock nut into place, and using a 13 millimeter wrench on the cone to hold it in place, we'll lock the 17 millimeter lock nut on top of that cone nut. And there it is. It's progressing around the rotation, but it runs much more smoothly. And it sounds better too. So now you can barely hear it. It's running very smoothly, there's no play. And when we lock on the wheel onto the fork, it's going to run smooth and quiet.